pleasant nights, fellow travelers along the path of the beam. I'm known on this level of the tower as Jaime and Fuego, and if it please you, join me here for a bit of palaver, long overdue palaver on Hail to Stephen King. That is Threadzys, guys. Stephen King, my favorite author. This is a show that I did well over 300 episodes of over the course of a number of years on the Horror Show channel, which I'm very much still involved with, and just cranked out a bunch of new reviews here at the beginning of 2026, along with Cecil and our various cohorts, Andrew, Davey, Robert, Susie when they get the chance. So, but this is here on my solo channel, Enfuegotainment, where this show has resided since I decided to go back to university and finish up in a film and media studies degree a few years ago. Got that finished up in 2025, and it is time now to look back at the year that was 2025 for the man that I so affectionately call El Rey. That is Threadzys, everybody, my favorite author, Stephen King, the aforementioned master of horror, as he has been classified by many. Yeah, I mean, so I have done a number of videos over the years in those 300 plus. This actually being the 350th episode of the program, which I didn't even realize until I was looking back at like the entire release schedule, comparing some notes, kind of brainstorming about some potential episodes for just getting this program up here and going again a little more regularly, hopefully, in 2026 with the degree all finished and everything, and being a new year, turn over a new leaf, to quote some Bad Religion there. But yeah, so I realized that there was one kind of moonlighting back on the Horror Show for one episode, which was my review of the book that Stephen King put out in 2025 entitled Never Flinch. We'll get to that here in a little bit. But yeah, I was just first and foremost, happy 350th episode of this show, and that's not even including all of the other King adjacent stuff that we covered on the Horror Show in 2025, much of which I will briefly touch on here as I take a look back at the year that was El Rey and all of his adjacent things, whether television, film, written work, like kind of tribute, adjacent sort of work, like anthologies and things inspired by his work. I mean, there was a glut of stuff, and an episode that I did, I think it was a year or two ago, when I was still back at Arizona State University in the film and media program, was that, okay, which was the bigger year for Stephen King? 1983, which is where, in my personal estimation as a longtime constant reader now, he kind of, like, really, he reached his peak of popularity up to that point. It was like, it was where he plateaued, his ascension like hit to that particular, level, because in 1983 he had 3 different films and 3 different books that all came out in the same year. So that year, as far as books go, he had Christine, he had Pet Sematary, which is in the Unholy Trinity for yours truly, and then also the novella Cycle of the Werewolf. So he wrote all 3 of those himself, but then also in the adaptation side of things, he had 3 films that all hit theaters, so there wasn't any television this year, and even though there had been like the Creepshow comic, I believe the year before this, and they had already done the Lawnmower Man, and I want to say it was the Twilight Zone magazine, but anyway, yeah, so he didn't have any television, but 3 feature films that hit theaters that year. So you had Cujo with Dee Wallace, obviously, which they keep saying they're trying to remake. The most recent word was that Darren Aronofsky is working on a feature version of it for Netflix, but much like all of the other dozens of King projects that have been announced since his kind of, the return of the King, as I called it at one particular point, and shout out to Tolkien Man, because I just went back to theaters about a week or so ago to rewatch in the cinema the extended edition of those 3 Peter Jackson films, and Dizzam, was it a wonderful experience. But, back to the matter at hand as I'm showing off my Life of Chuck hat here. Thanks, Chuck. But yeah, the return of the King, as I classified it at the time, was 2017, and that particular year, you had 4 films. Now, 2 of them were on Netflix, and then the other 2 were in theaters, and so you had that awful Dark Tower, just one last time around, King tweeting about the Horn of Eld being in Roland's Death Chain's possession finally, and whatever. That movie was a big disappointment, and we keep hearing that Mike Flanagan's working on it, but no new information because he's developing the Carrie series, which is one that we do presumably have to look forward to this year in 2026. But so terrible Dark Tower movie in 2017, but then we had the highest grossing horror film of all time, It, directed by Andy Muschietti, which had a big property resurgence this year, which we will get to momentarily as well with the Welcome to Derry television series. But and so but besides that, you had the two Netflix films, which were Gerald's Game and 1922, both of which I thought were excellent. Shout out to Flanagan for doing Gerald's Game. And then you also had 2 television projects that year, which were The Mist, which was a reimagining on Spike, which was god-awful. And then you had the first season of Mr. Mercedes, which was freaking exceptional. Jack Bender, who in more connective tissue, had the first season of The Institute this year, which we'll also get to here in a little bit on MGM+. But yeah, and then lastly, you also had the tail end of the Marvel Dark Tower comic, like, adaptation / expansion, which is one thing that I very, very much want to get to here in 2026 now that I'm done with school, and, you know, pursuing expansion of various projects. You know, I wrote a couple scripts. I've got, I'm looking into different sorts of other media-related work and whatnot, and, you know, trying to get more of my own personal content up as far as non-horror and spectacular stuff. But, yeah, in any event, so, yeah, you had just a glut of different things that came out in 2017, if you include that Marvel comic book, and I really want to cover those this year. That's one of the big goals, because I did the first 2 collections, if I recall correctly. I want to say, The Long Road Home, or The Road Home. What's the first one, and then Gunslinger Born, the inaugural one. So, I want to get to those. But, yeah, so that was a total, if you include, if I'm not mistaken, just to double check my notes, so if you include, and then also that year, I mean, I didn't even get into the books he published that year, which were only Sleeping Beauties and then Gwendy's Button Box. And I think the reason, despite having more things come out in 2017 in the video where I had the 2 of them going head-to-head, 83 versus 2017, I ended up, boy, it's been so long since I watched the video, I think I left it up to the audience to decide. But, I mean, it was really a quality over quantity in that instance, because, I mean, Sleeping Beauties and Gwendy's Button Box are not really higher end or even like moderate mid-tier Stephen King for me. I was disappointed with both of those books despite finding merits within both of them. I mean, then the Dark Tower movie was terrible, but then you had It, which was, you know, really good, obviously, you know, and celebrated, made so much money at the box office. And then Gerald's Game and 1922 were both great, but then for every Mr. Mercedes, you had The Mist. And so, yeah, despite more being released, 9 releases and release-adjacent sort of things total, you actually had King one-upping himself this year in 2025 with adaptation, connective tissue, all of those different things. And so, yes, 2019 did come relatively close to 17 and to this past year in 2025. I mean, with The Institute and then the Magic Feather tie-in book that Chismar did, and Pet Sematary remake and the Tall Grass adaptation on Netflix, It Chapter 2, which some people thought was kind of a step down. I actually really like It Chapter 2, you know, despite its flaws and whatever. And then Dr. Sleep, which was exceptional, especially the director's cut that Flanagan finished up. Mr. Mercedes was still going. Castle Rock, which is ended up being a similar approach. Like, I actually, with watching Welcome to Derry, gained a little bit more of a respect, I guess, for Castle Rock, because it did a similar thing with cherry-picking elements and then filling in gaps and making its own narrative. But, you know, that is much more like an anthology pertaining to The Stand that I'm going to cover here briefly. So just playing in the sandbox, so to speak. And then also that year you had an episode of the Creepshow television series on Shudder when that relaunched, and you had the Grey Matter adaptation. So once again, also in 2019, you had 9 adaptations. So 6 beautiful and very just widely regarded from 1983, which was The Ascension of the King. 2017 with 9 adaptations and like connective things, and then same with 2019, also 9. But this year, 2025, to turn the page, if I'm gonna quote some Seeger, which I actually really like that Metallica cover. When Metallica was trying to be a hard rock band, I don't know, I was into it in the 90s, but this year, there was so much stuff. So much, man. And ironically enough, similar to 2019, and even to 2017, this wasn't like 83, where you had some great writing from Stephen King. In 2017, once again, as I said, Sleeping Beauties, Gwendy's Button Box, you know, and then 2019, The Institute, and then Gwendy's Magic Feather, which he didn't even participate in co-writing for that, that being the only one of the Gwendy trilogy that he didn't help out with. But 2025, he had 2 different book releases that he actually was behind himself, and then the anthology, which I believe was put together by Brian Keene and then one other person, but I'll get to it here in a moment. But shall we, constant readers, come hither if it please ya, and let's just take a brief look back at the 10 different things. Yeah, 10 different things. So is this the new biggest year for Stephen King ever? Obviously, art is subjective, and that is up for debate, but I'm, without really pleading it and stating my case as this definitively being the biggest year ever for him, it obviously has to be in conversation, man, because after a little bit of a lull, you know, post-pandemic with, you know, some adaptations still coming out here and there, we had a glut of stuff, and we also had a lot of really good stuff as far as adaptations go, and some stuff where the burden of expectation was very much in play. Just show my Mr. Hiddleston's handsome mug right there, but the year started out in February 21st, 2025, with Osgood Perkins adapting, I'm not going to knock over the Blu-ray here, guys, but The Monkey. Yeah, so this was, I believe it was originally published in Playboy, but I mean, everybody knows that it was eventually collected in Skeleton Crew, the second anthology of short stories collected that Stephen King released in the 80s. And so The Monkey, with, I mean, produced by James Wan, Osgood Perkins is, you know, I didn't love Longlegs like a lot of people did, but Blackcoat's Daughter, fantastic. I mean, you know, he's Keeper. He put out 2 movies this year, actually. Keeper, which I was a little bit more ho-hum on, but I love his Gretel and Hansel movie as well. So, I mean, the Pretty Thing That Lives in the House was also interesting for Netflix that he did with the girl from Yellow Jackets, and I want to say Frodo Elijah was in that too. But so the year started out with this Tatiana Maslany. You had boy, I can't remember, Elijah Wood. He was in this too. Yeah, so this film, which has been on Blu-ray and I believe it's also on DVD and 4K for quite a while now, it started off the year very strongly. Much more Looney Tunes, goofy, you know, whatever. But I was there for it, man. I really enjoyed just the over-the-top, almost like Final Destination level silliness. We do have a review of it, as you would imagine, on the Horror Show channel, youtube.com/The Horror Show channel. And so if you want to check out myself and Cecil giving some glowing praise to this film, I thought this was a blast. This was a lot of fun, and you know, a worthy entry into, and also, I mean, Adam Scott in the cold open is just so funny. Yeah, if you haven't for whatever reason, check this out. It is streaming on Hulu, and then you can also rent it on VOD. But I mean, if you have either Hulu separately, or I think it was folded into Disney Plus at this particular point. But yeah, guys, this was a guys, gals, and everything else in between, and Jason, whatever. Yeah, The Monkey was a blast, and I had a ton of fun with this. I know some people were like, tonally, I just didn't dig it as much. They wanted it to be, because the short story is very serious, you know, and it's very much Stephen King, like, going into his relationship with his son Joe at the time, and it's very reflective of that in a lot of ways, and much more personal in that regard. Whereas, you know, it plays it pretty silly, very dark comedy almost in this regard for Perkins' film. So, but I still really enjoyed it. Then is where things kind of veered into, you know, I didn't despise Never Flinch, and once again, just like The Monkey, we also have a full, so the 349th episode of Hail to Stephen King, where I briefly, I moonlighted, or moonlit, or, you know, however you would properly describe it, back on the Horror Show, just for a review of this book. Another Holly book. Yeah. I want to say the 7th or 8th. Boy, I'm trying to remember, because we had the Mr. Mercedes trilogy, obviously, where Holly was introduced in the very first book. Then we had The Outsider. Then we had If It Bleeds. Then we had Holly proper. Then we had Never Flinch. Like, I thought Holly proper, just the book entitled Holly from a couple years ago, I want to say that was 23. I much prefer that book. I really genuinely do. I thought that it really put a bow on top of the Holly character, and I do like the Holly character. It's just, when she's been featured as much as Roland, and, you know, with regards to, like, the most ever in a Stephen King series, that's where I'm just like, really? I'm like, seriously? I mean, it's, you know, it's Roland, Deschain, and, you know, the new quartet, so not the old quartet with, you know, Bert and Elaine and stuff. But, yeah, I mean, if Holly, and he has another Holly book that he just recently announced that we're presuming is going to be coming in 26 or 27, but that is the one thing, and I'll get to it a little more expansively later, but we don't have anything as far as set release dates for anything new in this 2026 for Stephen King. Now, we have things that we expect to be coming, you know, and I'll get to that at the end of this video, but as of right now, this filming at the end of January, yeah, nothing set in stone, just prospective things that we are anticipating, but no dates locked in, no, none of the purest confirmation. But, so, never flinch, I mean, you've got Holly, you are seeing the, just, return of certain, like, Izzy is a character that I think was really developed quite well after being kind of a, I don't know, like, grating, almost like, kind of a bitch, you know, a little bit early on, because, I mean, she partnered up with Hodge's, you know, Hodge's former partner, whose name is eluding me right now, who was in The Outsider, and also, yeah, was in, I believe he was in the Holly book as well, if I remember correctly, but, I mean, so this is where they really expanded on the Izzy character, and the friendship that had formed with Holly over the years and stuff, but, you know, I did not, like, I could not suspend the disbelief of Holly being a bodyguard for this, and you know, once again, this book had a lot of similarities to the B plot, I guess, in Insomnia, where you had the woman speaker going around and stuff, and I did prefer the character in this, but like her arrogance, I think, was a little bit more developed and a little bit more amusing and stuff like that. And but you know, once again, you know, I'm a registered independent, so I'm not trying to ruffle any feathers one way or the other. But yeah, and then you know, you had a very predictive aspect where you had multiple villains going on. There's one with an identity crisis sort of bit. I don't know. I'm not trying to talk about a book that I was disappointed a bit in any more than I did on the lengthy review on the horror show, but Never Flinch was the novel release proper from Sai King this past year. Came out May 27th, so right around, what would that have been, Memorial Day, I believe? Anyway, so then, fast forward just a few weeks to a film that won, I believe it was the audience prize or the jury prize, or the, anyway, it was essentially, it received the top accolade at the Toronto International Film Festival in the fall of 2024, where it was acquired by Neon, and as opposed to being released that fall, like before 2024 ended, going for the awards push and everything, it got glowing reviews from tons of critics, although I did see that it ended up on one worst of list. I want to say it was a critic from really salty, very, I guess, you know, jaded, angry sort of reviewer on, it was either THR or Variety, who put The Life of Chuck, hence my hat and my shirt, on his worst of the year, and I'm just like, man, if you thought it was kind of hokey or sappy or whatever, man, but worst film of the year? Like, you're cynical as a motherfucker, brother. So, in any event, though, so Mike Flanagan getting the chance to adapt the novella, which was collected in If It Bleeds, which came out, I want to say it was 21. It was either 20 or 21. It was right when we were still very much in the thick of the pandemic. I believe it was 2021. But, took me right back to the feeling of that particular time and all of the uncertainty and fear and whatever. And this film had an all-star cast. I mean, Chiwetel Ejiofor, Karen Gillan, Mark Hamill. His wife is in here because she's in everything. I'm going all the way back to Hush, you know. In any event, this movie really warmed my heart, and I thought that in many ways it was actually an improvement on the source material. The structuring of working essentially not just in reverse, but inward, like outward to inward. I mean, it's definitely high concept. It's definitely a bit on the psychedelicized side, but there's like a warmth and a sincerity to this novel and to this adaptation that Mike Flanagan did that I absolutely adore. As the pull quote from Collider, I don't know about that sometimes. I used to love Collider. They've become just kind of hacky shill kind of, anyway, truly profound and magical, the best Stephen King film ever made. I think Shawshank would say hold my beer in the estimation of the American Film Institute and various others, but this had a similar vibe of just uplifting feeling that Shawshank does. And so is it one of the best Stephen King adaptations of all time in this constant reader's estimation, who has read every single thing that he's ever published? No, but you know, it hit me in the feels, as Cecil likes to say, and this one is actually streaming on Hulu/Disney Plus as well, so if you have not seen The Life of Chuck, I definitely recommend spending some time to do it. And as you guys already saw the shirt and the hat from when I did the unboxing and everything, and I just finally got the chance to put up my cosmic calendar. Come on, brightness, get back where you need to be. So yeah, this is pretty dope, man, and dope, man, please, can I have another hit? So yeah, lots of photos of the cosmos and stuff here, so yeah, very fun. In any event, that summer, finally got a new, so this was announced a while back and then it just kind of sat around as various things happened that way with, with Cemetery Dance. Unfortunately, I have all of the Stephen King special stuff that they have done with Cemetery Dance, that him and his team have done with Cemetery Dance over the years. Unfortunately, Richard Chizmar and his team there are notorious for delays. There's still a few books of his, like Seasons of Fear, I want to say it's called, which has an adaptation of The Raft in it. Anyway, I still have a couple pre-orders from them that have yet to see the light of day. I finally got the Stand pre-order, which was a pretty cool edition, but there is a new short story in here, and it was entitled The Extra Hour, I want to say. Let's just double check real quick. Losing ratings for, yes, The Extra Hour. I wasn't a fan of it, it definitely, the aforementioned Insomnia, where I was making some of the comparisons with the woman speaker who was one of the central characters in the Never Flinch book. Well, this has some of the other side of things, Ralph's character from Insomnia, where almost like a psychedelic sort of vibe that is going on from having issues sleeping, and so how this gentleman in the short story is convinced that there is in fact a extra hour, and it's this sort of psychosis is brought about from the lack of sleep and everything. So another story that I did a personal review of here on my own channel, Enfuegotainment, and I was underwhelmed, unfortunately, but I'm not here to slog away at it. So if you take that into consideration, I guess 2025 goes to 11 with Sai King if you also include the short story. But yeah, so this was available in Cemetery Dance issue 79. I'm still salty about the fact that it says Frank Darabont right here on the cover, and they didn't end up including that bit with him talking about, I believe it was the Green Mile and Shawshank, or maybe just Green Mile. Anyway, it was supposed to be in there. It's on the cover. Not in there. They ended up not putting it in the actual magazine edition. From what I heard from my boy Blue, who is, he's worked for Cemetery Dance for a long time actually. Yeah, he was confirming for me a number of months ago when that came out that it's going to be in the hardcover version. I'm like, and they just weren't going to redesign the magazine edition. Anyway, so as the summer continued though, we had the only thing that I don't have, well, the first thing I don't have a physical representation of, so it's just going to be the overlay, guys, but the Institute. Mary Louise Parker leads this up as the head of, basically a secret government sort of place where gifted children, this was, when the book came out in, boy, I can't remember if it was 2019. I think it was 2019. Let's double check. Yeah, I did mention that earlier in the video. This was Stephen King trying to outdo Stranger Things. He's like, I inspired you guys, so let me show you how it's done, young pups. But I don't know. I had a lot of faith in this one with Jack Bender, who did the Mr. Mercedes television series and did such a great job with that. This is the one that I watched the first couple episodes and then my free trial lapsed with MGM+, but I did just sign up for a new like promotional sort of 3-month period here at the end of the year. So now I can finally go back, finish watching this. The first few episodes, I was a bit underwhelmed by, unfortunately, but I guess that's kind of par for the course because of the fact that I wasn't that impressed with the source material that this one is based on. It's nice to see Mary Louise Parker, like in the 2000s, between Weeds, and then she did stuff like Red, and she was on the Mr. Mercedes show, she was Hodge's love interest, she was all over the place, and so I'm not seeing her as frequently anymore, so it was a pleasure to see her on this show, and I look forward to going back and actually checking it out. But this premiered in July 13th, the 8 episodes ran until August 24th, and the place to check this out, your destination, unless you want to buy episode by episode on iTunes, which I would not recommend. Sign up for a trial, MGM Plus, through your Amazon or through them just directly, and binge the show, 8 episodes, all of them around an hour. And yeah, I reviewed the premiere episode, and I remember, being kind of ho-hum on it, which was, once again expected. I was hopeful that Bender and his, just energy and passion behind it was going to elevate a little bit, and that didn't end up happening, at least for yours truly. So that was the fifth thing, if you include the short story that I mentioned. And here's where we get into what I describe as the King adjacent. So the equivalent of, like, when I mentioned Castle Rock earlier, the show that was on Hulu in 2018 and 19 for those 2 seasons, which I've been really just kind of itching to revisit because I thought Lizzie Kaplan in the 2nd season especially was so damn good as a young Annie Wilkes. But so Another thing that I didn't obtain until recently because I was busy finishing up school at Arizona State, and then we did all of the Stranger Things novels in the last few months of the year. So I believe I got this shortly. So this was released, The End of the World as We Know It, New Tales of Stephen King's The Stand, edited by Christopher Golden and Brian Keene, who I mentioned earlier, but and an introduction by Stephen King. This is a monster, and I think you have like around 30 different stories in here. You've got information about all of the authors in the very back, but yeah, almost 800 pages if you include the afterword and the foreword and all that stuff. So I have read a few of these stories. It's broken into, I believe, 3 different sections depending on the time frame within the lifespan of Captain Tripp. So actually 4 different ones. So part 1 is Down with the Sickness. I don't know about the Disturbed reference there, but as you will. Part 2 is The Long Walk. Part 3 is Life Was Such a Wheel, and then 4, which is only 2 stories, Other Worlds Than These. So obviously, for constant readers, there are lots of nod and wink sort of Easter eggs to the greater King-verse, you know, in some of those titles and stuff. But the first few that I read, I thought were really great, and now that time is freed up after finishing up all of the Stranger Things content that dominated my life in the back months of 2025 for better and for worse, although I had an enjoyable enough time with all of them. But now I can do a few separate videos where I kind of want to break this down as opposed to doing a ginormous video that is as big as trying to cover the 1,000+ pages of The Stand uncut. I want to break this down maybe since part 4 has, you know, only a couple stories, but I want to do at least 2 videos, maybe 3, depending. But yes, this was released August, what was it, August 19th, surprise, surprise. So yeah, this still, in my estimation and classification, would be something King adjacent, something King connected, and a release, you know, of and from his media empire of sorts. And yeah, there is a story in the first couple that I read here that took place in Vegas right as Captain Trips is hitting. It has an airline attendant and how she's trying to protect this young girl, and it's about as like Vegas is falling into craziness before Randall Flagg gets there. It was badass. I really liked that story. It's definitely one that I look forward to. Lots of great Easter eggs too. So that's one that I look forward to covering here for you guys in hopefully you know, in the coming months. So that is something to check out if you were unaware of it. So The End of the World as We Know It. A little rem for you there. Any screw. So once again, few weeks after. But on September 2nd, we actually had our next thing, just a couple weeks later, that was released, and you know, a very small one, but I did still do a little review of it on my personal channel, Enfuegotainment, a Hail to Stephen King episode, all about Maurice Sendak and Stephen King doing a version of Hansel and Gretel. And so the illustrations, obviously, by Maurice were The Wild Things Are Sendak, and retold by Stephen King as initially written by the Brothers Grimm, but yet they were even, so this is King retrofitting theirs, but yet, I mean, that story was just like, you know, folk tales that they heard and just kind of finally put into print. And so this I really dug, man. I mean, I'm not going to go through showing tons of the artwork or anything. I'll show just a little bit of it there. But the illustrations by Maurice are terrific. There is a very, very cool tie-in with Wizard and Glass, my favorite Dark Tower book. If anyone who has read this knows what I'm talking about, and it just made me like squeal. I was so happy. It's just, it seemed like a no-brainer in hindsight, but so yeah, I mean, great illustrations, just like you see my the Girl Who Loved Tom Gordon, you know, children's pop-up book version that I have back there, and also the Charlie the Choo Choo up there as well. This is very short, but you know, you can tell that it's King prose, excuse me, if that makes sense. And so I was a big fan of this. I thought this was a very cool release, and dare I say, in some ways I had bit more enjoyment with this than Never Flinch, and I know that's probably a little controversial to say, but yeah, so shortly after that, I'm making sure this isn't going to fall on its face down here, but shortly after that came maybe my favorite adaptation of El Rey that we got this year, and it released on September 12th after so many starts and stops. There were various people who were attempting to adapt this. I think shortly before this final version came to fruition, Andre Ovredal was trying to do it, and he did one of the best horror movies of the new millennium, The Autopsy of Jane Doe. He also did Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, which was really good. But guys, we finally got a version of Richard Bachman's The Long Walk, and it was awesome. This just I mean, the director, I want to say, what was it, Francis Lawrence, maybe, I want to say? Yeah, so this guy who had done the Hunger Games film, so he was no stranger to kids competing in a life or death sort of situation, but, I mean, this was R-rated, and it went for it with the brutality, with the language, but also the scripting, which I'm trying to remember the name of the dude who did Strange Darling that scripted this, J.T. Mulner. Fantastic job. And the performances from, I mean, Cooper Hoffman, I want to say, Philip Seymour Hoffman's son, David Johnson from Alien Romulus, I mean, and this steelbook, which was a gift from Lady Catherine's mother, Barbara, is just awesome, man. There you see Mark Hamill right there, Mark Hamill, who popped up in 2 different Psych King adaptations this year. Still got the digital code in here, but, I mean, and look at, so the shoes are akin to a paperback version of this that was put out, so that's really rad. Got the dog tags there. I mean, this was just such a terrific adaptation. One of my only qualms is maybe how the ending was changed. Excuse me, how the ending was altered. But beyond that, that's just one of the most minor gripes. It's in contention with Welcome to Derry for my favorite of the Stephen King adaptations this year. That's not to take anything away from the dark comedy enjoyment that was The Monkey, or, you know, just the sentimental sweetness of The Life of Chuck. But yeah, The Long Walk, this was something special, and this is actually streaming now on Starz. Well, sign up for a free 7-day trial or something, watch it, and just like with the couple previous adaptations that I mentioned, you can totally go and rent this on VOD. But, I mean, yeah, if you're a physical media collector like I am, you definitely want this awesome steelbook. It was a very awesome gift, so thanks to Barbara for that, much appreciated. And so that came out September 12th, and so we still had 2 more things that were coming in this year. And the one that I was going to lift up the book, but maybe not. So they had been talking ever since Andy and his brother Barbara did it, and then Chapter 2 in 2017 and 2019 respectively. He had been talking for a while that he really wanted to do kind of like what Ron Howard had initially plotted out, when you had like Javier Bardem was going to play the gunslinger, and he wanted to do Dark Tower movies and then have a tie-in television series that kind of filled in some of the young Roland gaps and stuff like that. Welcome to Derry is taking the interludes that Mike Hanlon was responsible for, where you had like the Black Spot, you know, Bradley Gang, things like that, you know, the crazy lumberjack murder madness and everything. Anyway, long story short, they had to change the timeline because, you know, they changed the timeline to 89 for it 2017. So this took place in 1962. And it started out a little shaky for me. I gotta admit, we reviewed every episode of this on the Horror Show channel. The only one that I missed, unfortunately, was the Black Spot episode, and that was based on some family stuff that I had going on. But this show ended up just really morphing into something seriously special. Performance from the actor who played Dick Halloran, I thought he was just tremendous. Even though they did the little bait and switch, which shocked so many people after the first episode, which I had to applaud them for. I didn't like the CGI stuff, but I did appreciate the brutality. And I mean, there's some pretty gnarly set pieces in this, all of which, with the exception of the Black Spot, were original to the series. And that cameo at the end, man, chef's kiss, as the kids like to say. This series as a whole, when it veered more into the Castle Rock essence of it and filling in their own gaps and making up their own mythology, there was a lot of other stuff they did that it was really tremendous. And Bill fucking Skarsgård wowed me in this. This was legit. A lot of people have said this, and they're totally right. This is the most brutal Pennywise that we have ever seen. Like, ever put to screen. And some of the stuff that was done, I mean, it was an incredible performance. He upped his game so much more. The look of him with like the blood face and the red Pennywise and stuff. They just put out some new, you see all the Funko Pops back there probably. They just put out some new It Funko Pops for the Welcome to Derry series. This premiered October 26th. It ran through December 14th on HBO, and then you can stream it on HBO Max. If for whatever reason you're a constant reader that was on the fence about it, or maybe watched the first couple episodes, which were okay, but this is a show that really gained steam as it went, and in a lot of ways, I do think that they stuck the landing. I have minor gripes that I made sure to voice throughout the entirety of the show, but as a whole, I think that the show was a success, and they have not greenlit season 2 yet, but they're already in a pre-production phase for it, which will be going to 1935, so presumably we won't just get the little Easter egg about the Bradley gang. We'll actually be around that time period of, you know, mobsters and whateverness. I'm trying to remember if Prohibition had been already absolved by that point or rescinded or whatever, but long story short, Welcome to Derry was a very special show, and it's one of the reasons why I assert that 2025 is in the conversation for the biggest year of Stephen King, not just for his own work, but the adaptations of his work ever. Not just because it has the highest number of releases now, having leapfrogged the 9, which was the case for both 2017 and 2019, but also because of the fact that, I mean, that show did gangbusters for ratings numbers. I mean, and it was all that, like, Cecil loves his TikTok, man, and there is so much Welcome to Derry shizzle on TikTok, it's just bonkers, y'all. So I highly recommend the show. It's not perfect, you know, it's a warts and all sort of situation, but I think that fans of the source material, for the most part, unless you feel like everything has to be a direct adaptation, but it's not, it's another turn of the wheel, guys, you know, another level of the tower. It's not gonna, I mean, it's like, you know, that, I mean, they were drinking Nozzla in the show, right? So, I mean, it's not going to be exactly the same. It's, you know, it's a different King multiverse sort of situation. So that's why I did not get pissed off about it. It's an Elseworlds, it's a what if, and, you know, just, you know, calm your tights, as people like to say. Unfortunately, the year ended, well, you know, the year ended with Welcome to Derry, so I can't say it ended, but the last new thing that debuted was on November 14th, and it was the Edgar Wright remake of The Running Man, which was touted as being so much more of a faithful adaptation. This one has actually not released physically yet. It comes out on March 3rd, 2026. You will be able to actually get a 4K and Blu-ray and stuff release of this. There's deleted scenes, commentary tracks, all of those juicy bonus features that are always so much fun to have on, you know, a physical release and stuff. But I guess the commentary and some of the bonuses are on the digital version too. But in any event, I thought tonally this was all over the place. I am not a big fan of Tommy, who is the lead in this. I don't know. This just, I mean, it went from super serious to ping-pong to like almost slapstick goofy. It just did not work for me, and you know, I know they can't do the ending, the actual ending of the novella, The Running Man. But they did some psych-out sort of stuff, and there was also, I'm not here to spoil anything, but you know, how the ending expanded and tacked on a little additional, but you know, the cast was so good. I mean, I may not like Glenn Powell that much, he was okay in the role, but I mean, you know, Coleman Domingo, you had Josh Brolin, I mean, you know, there was even, oh, what's his wormy face was in this too, who's, I always said Michael Cera. I always get Michael Cera and what's his face, Jesse Eisenberg confused. I know that happens to a lot of people, but I mean, so there's a lot of talent in this, but and Katie O'Brien too. I love her when she pops up in anything. She's a badass. But yeah, The Running Man was a big disappointment for me, guys, and that is the clear indication of the burden of expectation in that regard. So, I mean, the big physical release that everybody's looking forward to is when Welcome to Derry Season 1 comes out on May 5th. So, pre-order, guys, you know, make sure to get that locked in. I know I certainly have. So, if you include that along with something Sai King collaborated on, it's a, like, fake newspaper sort of thing called the End Times that I heard about when it was announced in the summer, but I guess near the end of the year they finally started putting out these fake little like tabloid looking newspapers called the End Times. It's Stephen King collaborating with Benjamin Percy. They have released these physical versions of these newspapers if you do the $35 subscription. They also have a $15 digital subscription option, but this is one that I had made a note of in, like, you know, all of my production notes and everything, and then I was telling myself I was going to hold out for this big physical version omnibus that they are eventually going to be putting out. I don't know if I can wait that long, man. Just like I was trying to get a better hardcover version of Trapped, which is the story idea that King and Richard Chizmar came up with together that was apparently filmed as a short film, shot as a short film by Richard Chizmar's son, who he did like the Widow's Point stuff with, or maybe it was just the movie. In any event, so I ended up just saying I'm not going to spend all this money on a hardcover of this when King just was collaborating on the story, didn't even work on the script, you know. So I've got that. Actually, I just won a great eBay auction of that recently, so I can't wait forever, you know, for these different King things to actually be able to review and properly give their attention to. So, but yeah, if you include the end times and the new short story King release that some may not want to actually, you know, add into the tally. I mean, you had 11 King things, so is 2025 now the new reigning champion? You know, has it, you know, stolen the crown from 2017? Or, I mean, once again, you've got more of a hit and miss sort of thing, because I didn't like Running Man very much. I did not like Never Flinch very much, but yet, I mean, between, you know, The Monkey, Life of Chuck, which were both wins, The Institute, not so much. The jury is out on The End of the World as We Know It, since I haven't finished the entire thing, and King only did an introduction there. But The Long Walk was incredible. Hansel and Gretel was a very fun time for what it was. Welcome to Derry was great. So, but as we round things out here and do our best to take a look forward into the new year that we are just concluding the first month of here in 2026, it's crazy to think about the fact that, you know, when there were 11 different things, if you include the short story and, you know, some of the King adjacent stuff that was released this past year, that we are looking at a very barren landscape. There's nothing, donuts, zip, zilch, guys, that has actually been dated as of yet. Now, it has been confirmed by MGM Plus that there is a second season of The Institute in development. So we know that that is happening. We just don't know for sure if it's actually going to be coming here in, you know, this new year. Also, everybody is thinking that with the success of Welcome to Derry, that the second season is like a foregone conclusion, but I'm not predicting that that is going to be hitting this year. You know, the last we heard from Andy is that they have all the pre-production going, as I mentioned earlier in this video, and yet until they get the official green light, they can't really, like, forge forward, you know, beyond just kind of that preliminary phase. He's been actually talking more lately about finally doing the It supercut of the two films that he did, you know, in 2017 and 2019 respectively, and now he still has a bunch of unused footage, and he actually wants to film some new scenes. I would imagine the possibility of that happening now with the success of Welcome to Derry and them attempting to tie everything together, and, you know, the non-linear way that the entity that takes on the guise of Pennywise, you know, was revealed in this, like, kind of altering, well, not so much altering, but I guess expanding on some of the mythology. I know a lot of purists are going mad contradictory, but it's like, okay, on every level of the tower, do we have a Pennywise? Do we have a Danlo? Do we have these sort of interdimensional creatures that, or, you know, is that, I mean, that was a debate that we were having at the end of the Welcome to Derry show, but, I would love to see that. I think if we got the Kill Bill Whole Bloody Affair extent of those two films, it would be just, you know, state of the badass art, to quote the dearly departed Bill Paxton as Hudson in Aliens. But yeah, guys, and then aside from that, I mean, they are alleging, we got a little bit of an update about Fairy Tale now, as opposed to being a Paul Greengrass, like, produced sort of situation for television. Now it's going to be an A24 film. You know, they also said they're making that Mr. Yummy into a film, which I'm like, huh, that's an interesting choice. Now, that's not because of what goes on in it, you know, but, and, you know, they're very sexual and all that. But, I mean, it's a very, it's not a well-known sort of King property. It's, I mean, like when they said that they were going to turn My Little Pony into a Josh Boone-produced thing that never... I still have, like, this dossier of projects that were announced since I started Hail to Stephen King all those years ago that either never came to fruition, or we would get an update, like, years later, like the AMC Plus series for Sleeping Beauties that we got a little bit of an update on, like, a year or so ago. Just like the Overlook series that was initially being put together by Bad Robot and J.J. Abrams. Now it's apparently shifted to Netflix, but that was like a few years ago that they mentioned that. So, I mean, Billy Summers is another one that they say is going to be a series, but who the hell knows? I mean, as of this point, the only one that I am confident, even though it's not been dated yet, is going to happen in 2026, as far as the adaptation side goes, is none other than Mike Flanagan's Carrie series, which... I love Mike Flanagan, anything that he does. I mean, Midnight Mass is the most Stephen King, non-Stephen King thing that he ever did. I adore that series, and obviously his adaptations, Dr. Sleep, Gerald's Game, you know, and even, you know, Hill House was terrific. I mean, Flanagan's awesome, guys. I mean, all the way back to Absentia. But did we need another Carrie? I mean, we're about to celebrate, what, I want to say the 50th anniversary this year? Yeah, 76 of the Brian De Palma film, so I'm definitely going to do a video about that. But I mean, we had the Rage Carry 2 in the 90s. We had the backdoor pilot for the TV series in the early 2000s. And I covered all of those along with the Chloe Grace Moretz remake. But do we need another Carrie? There's the musical, too, that I've been wanting to do a video of, because I had a viewer, a year or so ago send me some bootleg stuff of the Carrie stage play, the musical that, has been performed in various iterations. So, I mean, do we need more Carrie? I guess since Flanagan's doing it, I'm definitely on board. That's the only adaptation that I think we have a concrete, definitive yes, it will be happening, despite the fact that it's not been dated yet, because it's been entirely shot. I don't think Amazon is going to shelve it, which is where Flanagan has his first look deal now. So, and then, beyond that, we have nothing dated as far as books go. I just saw somebody in the Hail to Stephen King Facebook group, for those who still, jump in there every now and again and haven't jumped over to Discord or wherever else for their, constant reader discourse. But, yeah, nothing dated as far as a new King book in 2026. Everybody is, fingers firmly crossed it's going to be that third Talisman book, or the third Jack Sawyer book, following up the Talisman and Black House, which I'm very much looking forward to, despite the dearly departed Peter Straub only contributing like his notes and the stuff that him and King were working on for that third entry before his, unfortunate passing. But not dated. I think it's probably going to be a mammoth, a doorstopper sort of situation, similar to the first two books as far as page count goes. So, I don't know. Will it come this fall? I'm not holding my breath, but boy, would it be awesome. And aside from the aforementioned, that big omnibus hardcover that they're doing for the End Times, that thing with Benjamin Percy I mentioned earlier in this, we have nothing dated. Nothing. Zip zilch, as I said earlier. So after perhaps his most prolific year, not so much from the literary standpoint, but, for high-profile releases, both on the big and the small screen, is it the biggest Stephen King year ever as far as, quota of releases? Sure. I mean, I don't know. What did you guys think? What is, your estimation as far as compared to, the glut of 2017 and the return to the King, as I like to call it, and the year where he ascended to the peak of his popularity in 1983, which I did the debate on in a number of episodes ago here for Hail to Stephen King. I don't know, y'all, but I would love to, further continue the palaver down in the comments below here on Enfuegotainment. But I extend the grande gracias. Y'all know me. If you were tuning into one of these videos, or at least I presume you have, after 350 episodes, man. Craziness, there was the lull when I was back in school, but getting back to this whenever I have the opportunity is always such a pleasure and an honor and a privilege. So thanks so very much. I've been Jaime Fuego. You can find more on all social media sectors: Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. I do a little bit of short movie stuff on the TikyTokies, Cecil Laird's beloved platform. I'm also, everything multi-posts. If I throw a short little Rapido Fuego movie review on Insta, it shows up on the threads. If that's your chosen spot, I always, share it onto the TweeterX or whatever the hell they're calling it now. So yeah, I'm out there in all of the interwebs, but I try not to really get as involved in so much of the drama that this current climate of not just our country, but this planet, this keystone Earth, this level of the tower, everybody. Boy, it's pretty exhausting a lot of the time. But I am trying to maintain some hopeful power positivity that we are going to, despite nothing being announced 1 month into the year now, 2026, that we are going to get some really cool King things in the coming 11 others of 26. So once again, I've been Fuego. Y'all have been rad status, everyone. And until the Wheel of Ka comes around once more, hasta luego, sin amigos, constant readers and viewers alike. Say thank you. I hope that we have been well met, and we share more of this palaver sooner rather than later. And until then, remember, stay scared. And yeah, I always got to give the horror show shout out. And definitely, dolphinately, turtly, yeah, what's up there? Read Stephen King. This is actually the one that I'm looking forward to giving another look to. This beautiful Cemetery Dance version of The Stand, which is going to be right by my side as I am doing The End of the World as we know it. God, I hope it's not the end just yet. So I got stuff I want to do.